My name is Hanli. I was born into a world where mortals are nothing more than fragile dust, easily blown away by the cold, merciless winds of fate. In our isolated, poverty-stricken village, hunger and despair were not just passing visitors. They were our constant, silent companions, carving deep, sorrowful lines into my parents' weary faces. Every brutal winter felt like it could easily be our last. Watching them sacrifice everything, trading their own life force just to keep me alive, I knew I had to forge a completely different path. I had to leave. To relieve their crushing burden, I made a heavy, irreversible choice that would break my mother's heart forever. As the heavy silence filled our worn-down home, I embraced my weeping mother one last time. I could feel her trembling, and I desperately swallowed the bitter tears burning in my own throat. There were no grand farewells, only the painful realization that this goodbye might be eternal. As I turned my back on the only home I had ever known, my footsteps felt as heavy as iron. I walked toward the waiting carriage, ignoring the paralyzing fear gnawing at my stomach. Climbing onto that creaking wooden cart, I took one final, lingering look at the fading silhouettes of my past. The wheels began to turn, dragging me away from the warm, forgiving light of my childhood, and plunging me directly into the cold, unknown, and utterly ruthless world of cultivators. There would be no turning back. The endless, grueling journey in that creaking cart finally came to an end, and what opened up before my eyes was an entirely different world. The massive, towering ancient gates of the Seven Mysteries sect loomed over us like a giant stone beast, casting a long, dark shadow that swallowed the horizon. This wasn't just a school for martial arts. It was an absolute fortress built entirely on power, ruthlessness, and the survival of the fittest. As we stepped through those heavy iron doors, the harsh reality of this new life hit me instantly. There was no warmth here, no room for weakness, and certainly no pity for poor village boys. We were greeted by the cold, piercing stares of the senior disciples and the unforgiving faces of the sect masters. They looked at us not as children, but as raw materials to be tested, broken, and judged. The rules were made crystal clear right from the start. Only the strongest, the most resilient, and the most determined would be allowed to stay. The rest would be cast out, forgotten, and sent back to the crushing poverty they crawled out of. For me, failing was simply not an option. Returning to that starving village meant a slow death, and I had already sacrificed everything to get here. Before we could even catch our breath, the infamous entry trial began without a single moment of warning. The signal echoed through the mountains, and instantly, the air grew thick with pure desperation. We were pushed forward, driven like hunted prey into the dense, suffocating maze of the bamboo forest. The green leaves blurred past me as my lungs began to burn with every frantic, agonizing step. My heart pounded like a war drum, but I forced my legs to move faster, refusing to let the other boys overtake me. But the true, terrifying nightmare was waiting for us at the end of the forest, the legendary bone-refining cliff. Looking up at that sheer, vertical wall of jagged, unforgiving rock, my blood ran cold. It looked completely impossible to climb, a massive stone monument designed to break the human spirit. Chains hung down against the cliffside, swaying gently over a bottomless, foggy abyss. One single slip, one momentary loss of focus, meant a shattered body at the bottom of the canyon. As I grabbed the cold metal and began my agonizing descent, every muscle in my body screamed in absolute protest. My fingers bled against the sharp stone edges, and the sweat blinded my eyes. The boys around me were weeping, slipping, and falling into the darkness. But every time my grip weakened, the terrifying memory of starvation flashed through my mind. That fear became a raging fire in my chest, turning my weakness into an iron will. I locked my teeth, ignored the pain, and kept climbing upward into the unknown. With one final, desperate surge of strength, I dragged my broken body over the jagged edge of the cliff. The brutal trial was finally over, but there was no celebration, only the heavy, painful sound of gasping for air on the cold, hard ground. Beside me lay Zhang Tai, another exhausted boy who had barely survived the slaughter. Out of hundreds of hopeful candidates who started this race, only a small handful of us remained standing. We foolishly thought the worst was behind us, believing we had finally earned our place in the sun. But the true destiny waiting for us at the top was far darker than anything we could have imagined. From the eerie silence of the shadows stepped an old man known as Dr. Imo. His eyes were deeply sunken, cold, and completely unreadable, looking down at us not with grandfatherly warmth, but with the chilling curiosity of a predator examining its prey. He chose the two of us, pulling us into his custody for a hidden purpose known only to him. Following his silent, limping figure, we were led away from the main sect and deep into the isolated sanctuary of God Hand Valley. On the surface, the valley was incredibly peaceful, filled with the quiet rustle of exotic medicinal herbs and heavy misty air. But beneath that serene facade, an eerie, suffocating darkness lingered in every corner. This hard-won victory was not a reward, it was an invitation into a deeper abyss. As the gates of the valley closed behind us, I realized my desperate struggle for survival had not ended. My journey into the shadows was just about to begin.